Y&R spoilers reveal relationships that have long since ended but remain like open wounds in the minds of those involved, especially when one of the two never lets go. For Audra, it was Holden, the man who was an important part of her old years before she entered the world of power and calculation in Genoa City, before she accepted to work for Tucker, before she understood her own dark corners. The relationship between Holden and Audra at that time was filled with intense emotions, promises that seemed inseparable. But Audra gradually realized that behind Holden's burning feelings was a possessive instinct, an obsession with control. At first, it was just petty jealousy, endless questions about every call, every text. Gradually it was requests to cut off friends, it was a scrutinizing look every time she stepped out. Audra increasingly feels trapped in an invisible cage, where every action and emotion is judged and imprisoned. When Audra decides to leave, she thinks everything is over. She thinks she is strong enough to cut ties with the past, to build a new future, whether through pragmatic calculations with Tucker or anyone else in her power games. But the past has never let Audra go. It clings to her in the form of Holden. A man who always appears when Audra least expects it, in places she thinks she is safe, behind every glance, every sudden sigh in the middle of seemingly numbingly busy working hours. At first, it was just random meetings at coffee shops, in parking lots, in hotel lobbies. Holden always had a reason to appear: work, friends, a business trip. But then the coincidences grew more and more frequent, the confusion in Holden's eyes turned into endless reminders of the past years, of the love he thought they had. Even though Audra had repeatedly affirmed, gently explained, and firmly refused, Holden still seemed not to hear. He smiled, using that as an excuse to pull her closer, emphasizing that no one could understand her like he did, that no one could give her what she truly needed except him. Holden's presence was like a lingering shadow, gradually invading even the deepest corners of Audra's mind. She began to realize that every step she took could be monitored, every encounter could be controlled. Sometimes in the office, when Audra was talking to a colleague, she could vaguely feel Holden's eyes following her from outside the glass door, just a fleeting moment like a ghost but enough to confuse her. Once, while stopping at the hotel basement, Audra discovered a bouquet of flowers placed on the windshield, with a familiar line, "I'm still here. I know you still remember." She trembled, feeling scared, but still tried to appear calm as she passed by her colleagues who were gossiping about her private life. Things became more suffocating when Holden began to show his intention of not accepting any rejection from Audra. He openly appeared at events where she was present, finding every way to interfere in her current relationships, even not hesitating to approach partners and friends that Audra once trusted. Some people initially thought it was just a coincidence, a lingering feeling from an old love, but later, Holden's presence became so haunting that people around him began to gossip, questioning the line between stalking and harassment. Audra herself feels that any explanation to outsiders is meaningless, because Holden knows how to disguise his surveillance with a polite, dignified face. Only those who have been victims of toxic relationships realize that behind the words of concern, the questions, "Are you okay?" is a silent threat, a warning that every secret, every mistake in the past can be exposed at any time. For Holden, love is never freedom, is maturity. It is the obsession to have Audra at all costs, the sense of control and power that he has lost since Audra left. He does not hesitate to recall the secrets of the past, the stains that Audra tried to hide when entering Tucker's world. Holden holds the pieces of memory that can destroy Audra's image, from the wrong choices, the shady deals, to the times when Audra is at her weakest and most desperate. That was the weapon that kept Audra from completely breaking up with Holden, from openly challenging him. Because just one small mistake, all the achievements, all the relationships that Audra had worked so hard to build would go up in smoke. In a moment of weakness, Audra sometimes flirts with Holden, using her charm to appease or prolong the time, hoping that he will get bored and let go. But she knows that each time, it only complicates things, giving Holden the illusion of a chance to reunite, of feelings that still exist within her. The vicious cycle of clinging, rejection, and appeasement continues, exhausting Audra both physically and mentally. No one knows how far Holden will go. Audra herself cannot predict the danger that Holden can cause when pushed into a corner. He has proven that he can do anything, from destroying Audra's current relationships, causing psychological pressure, to even using secrets as weapons to control her. One day, Holden may cross the dangerous line, when blind love turns into an obsession with revenge. When there is nothing left to lose, Holden may become a storm that sweeps away everything Audra has worked so hard to build. Audra realizes that she cannot run forever. She must find a way to face it, must decide whether to let go of the past, be ready to accept the consequences, or continue to be controlled by fear. Every day is a battle between the instinct to protect herself and the obsession to be controlled, between the desire for freedom and the darkness of the past. In the long sleepless nights, Audra wonders if she will have the courage to cut off Holden forever, no matter the cost, or will she continue to live in the cage created by her own fear, while out there, Holden quietly waits for the opportunity, like a tireless predator. And that is the harsh truth of toxic relationships, where love is no longer a refuge, but a chain, a scar that never heals, and every time she remembers it, it hurts as much as the first time it was cut. Audra understands that the biggest battle of her life is not with Holden, but with her past, with her fears and old wounds. But will she be strong enough to win? Or will she forever be a shadow in Holden's haunting story, the man who never let go? There are ghosts of the past that seem to have been buried, but sometimes they return, more dangerous, more haunting, and much harder to control. For Audra, Holden is that ghost, a nameless, formless obsession that always clings to her even though she has changed, matured, and tried to run away from everything that once suffocated her. The relationship between Audra and Holden was once a whirlwind of youth, impulsive and fierce. But not all flames are beautiful, not all loves are safe. From the very first day with Holden, Audra sensed an unhealthy love in him, always accompanied by a need for control, possession, and dark jealousy. Over time, that possession not only did not fade but also became more and more intense, becoming shackles that bound Audra, suffocating all freedom, all opportunities to rebuild her life. Audra finally chose to leave the past behind, carrying with it the scars of her soul that were difficult to heal. She thought that the noisy city of Genoa, the ambitions for power, and the whirlwind of new work would help her erase the bad memories, leaving Holden as just a vague name in her mind. But Holden refused to become anyone's past, especially Audra's. Holden's return was quiet but haunting, like a persistent predator. At first, it was just a few accidental encounters in cafes, hotel lobbies, and small parties where Audra thought she had a good handle on the guest list. But then, the frequency of meeting Holden became more and more frequent, and the places that used to be Audra's safe havens, the gym, the hair salon, even the deserted bookstore, suddenly had Holden's familiar figure. He did not hesitate to step forward, strike up a conversation, and recall memories that had receded into the past with the eyes of a victor. Audra became more and more confused and worried every day, but did not dare to name that fear. Because even she, Audra, did not know what to call this feeling other than one word, being followed. Holden seemed to have gone far beyond the usual boundaries of an ex-lover. That persistent patience no longer had the appearance of someone who was nostalgic for the past, but had turned into dangerous stalking behavior. Audra knew clearly that Holden could leave town at any time, just a phone call, a flight, a new reason to start a new life somewhere else. But Holden did not choose to leave. He resolutely stayed, wandering through Genoa like a haunting shadow, hunting for Audra's every breath. Day by day, Holden revealed more and more the toxic controlling nature that he had hidden under the guise of care and love. He follows Audra in a subtle, discreet, yet extremely proactive way, from accidentally appearing on her travel route, secretly observing her private meetings, to constantly texting, leaving small gifts with hidden warning messages, "I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." Audra gradually feels suffocated to the point of changing her living habits, changing hotel rooms, changing her hours, even avoiding close friends for fear of getting them involved. Holden's stubborn persistence is a double-edged sword that makes Audra both scared and angry. She realizes that she is falling into the same trap, when each attempt to cut off, each no only makes Holden more extreme, more dangerous. In the moments when Audra thinks she is safe, Holden appears, reminding her that he is still following her every step. Sometimes, he coldly threatened to expose Audra's past secrets, things that only the two of them knew, and just a mild threat was enough to wake Audra up in the middle of the night, trembling, thinking about everything she had sacrificed to live until today. The people around Audra seemed to not realize the danger that was approaching. They only saw Holden as an old acquaintance, maybe a little strange, but nothing beyond the limits of nostalgia for the past. As for Audra, in her efforts to hide her wounds, the more she withdrew, the more isolated and vulnerable she became. She didn't know who to cling to, didn't dare to ask for help for fear of being judged, of being seen as weak or exaggerating the problem. Sometimes she herself wondered if she was overreacting, if Holden was just a poor man who didn't know how to let go. But every time she woke up in the middle of the night, shivering at the sight of someone outside her window, Audra knew clearly, her fear was real, and it was growing. Finally, what Audra feared most happened. It was late one afternoon, when she left the office, stepped into the empty parking lot, intending to just stop by to pick up some documents and then go straight home. There was no one around, just the sound of high heels clicking on the cement floor and the last rays of sunlight shining through the cracks in the door. But as soon as she got to the car, Audra felt a chill run down her spine. A dark figure rushed up from behind, covered her mouth, and squeezed her small body. Audra struggled desperately, but Holden's strength was like a madman. In just a few seconds, everything was plunged into darkness. No one knew where Audra had disappeared. Meanwhile, Holden had moved her out of town discreetly, as he had planned all along. No one saw the car leave Genoa that evening, nor did anyone question it when Audra's phone went off, her emails went unanswered, and all her appointments were cancelled. People simply thought Audra was busy with some work, or she decided to leave town quietly like she always did when under pressure. Holden drove through the night, taking Audra all the way to California, where no one could find any trace of them. In a small house on the edge of the coastal town, Holden kept Audra by his side, convincing her that this was a new beginning, a chance to start over, that no one in the outside world understood and loved her like he did. But Audra knew very well that it was all just a golden prison built by the obsession of an out-of-control man. The following days were a series of nightmares as Audra lived in fear of being physically and mentally abused. She had no way out, no one to help, no choice but to survive by her courage, patience, and the faint hope that someone would notice her unusual disappearance. In her rare moments of lucidity, Audra thought about the past, about the last time she tried to explain to Holden that love could not be based on possession, that she had suffered enough, hurt enough to never want to repeat the old tragedy. But for Holden, the answer no never existed. Audra's rejection only made him more dangerous, more fierce, ready to destroy everything just to satisfy his ultimate desire to possess. For Holden, if he could not have Audra, he would not let anyone else have her, maybe even push things further, beyond the boundaries of crime. In the following days in Genoa City, gradually everyone began to realize that Audra's disappearance was unusual. Colleagues, friends, and even competitors all asked questions, searched for her whereabouts. But as things gradually became clear, Holden had disappeared with Audra from every map, every trace. No one knows where Audra is, no one knows when Holden planned it all, only that a woman is missing, and her ex-boyfriend, now ghost, nightmare, kidnapper, has revealed his true colors, a man obsessed, willing to do anything to possess the woman he loves, even if it means destroying her life. And somewhere far away, between four cold walls, Audra still keeps fighting, keeps hoping, keeps planning for the day she can save herself, or at least leave a trace for someone to know the truth about the horror she is enduring. Audra and Holden's story is a chilling warning about the darkness that lurks behind toxic relationships. When the line between love and obsession blurs, no one knows what lies ahead, heaven or hell, and sometimes, no one hears the cry for help until it's too late. There are people who enter each other's lives like a storm, breaking all safety boundaries, leaving behind lasting aftershocks that never subside. For Audra, Holden is that storm, a stormy past, a nameless obsession that no matter how far she goes, she still cannot completely escape. When she thought her new life in Genoa City was far enough away for Audra to be free to start over, Holden suddenly appeared, not only alone but also bringing with him a person who had a mysterious connection to him, Damien. The story begins when Holden arrives in town in a new role. He pretends to be Damien, hiding his true identity to secretly observe and approach Audra. No one but Holden knows the real reason why he chose to pretend, but one thing is certain, his motive is not simply sightseeing or looking for work. It could be the urge to control, it could be the haunting past, or it could simply be that Holden wants to feel the power of manipulating others, especially the woman he once considered his own. In his early days in Genoa City, Holden appears as a perfect copy of Damien. He learns to imitate the voice, the way he walks, even the small habits that only those close to him can recognize. Everything is meticulously calculated so that no one suspects, not even Audra. Sometimes, Damien himself feels creepy when facing his own shadow, perfectly recreated to the point of being chilling through Holden. It doesn't take Damien long to discover the appearance of the copy in the heart of the city. He quickly determines that Holden has arrived in Genoa City through mysterious text messages, strange calls, and a series of unusual signs around old acquaintances. At first, Damien thought Holden just wanted to try his luck with a new life, or simply find a job to stabilize himself. However, things became tense when Damien discovered that Holden's real motive was not work, but Audra. Damien, as an old friend, approached Holden many times, patiently persuading him to return to Los Angeles, where a good job position with an attractive salary was waiting. Damien knew clearly that Holden was not incompetent, he had even done very well at his old job, was a person who knew how to control his emotions and behave properly. But this time all of Damien's efforts were in vain. Holden flatly refused, even showing annoyance every time Damien mentioned leaving Genoa City. He made excuses one after another, citing that he needed time to rest, or had not found the true motivation to start over. But Damien was smart enough to understand that behind the delay was a well-planned plan, and at the heart of it was Audra. Meanwhile, Audra increasingly felt the unease creeping into her daily routine. At first, she only felt a few unusual signs. Strange looks in public, the feeling of being followed every time she left the office, the silent phone calls that went unanswered. The climax came when she accidentally ran into Holden at a small party, and Audra's intuition immediately told her that something was wrong. Holden's polite greetings were hidden behind a cold mask, his unwavering eyes, and his possessive questioning questions that made Audra confused. She did not understand why Holden was determined not to leave, even though the opportunity ahead was much more attractive than any material conditions in Genoa City. On the other hand, Damien also feels guilty. He feels partly responsible for bringing Holden to this city, even though at first he simply wanted to help his old friend escape the darkness of the past. But now, Damien himself has become a part of the dangerous game that Holden is playing, both a helpless observer and an unwitting accomplice who helps the tragedy happen. In the following days, the atmosphere in Genoa City becomes more tense than ever. Audra lives in fear, wary of every movement around her. Damien tries every way to pull Holden out of the haunting quagmire, while Holden sinks deeper and deeper into the maze he created himself, regardless of everything just to avoid leaving the woman he has blindly loved. The stories of Holden, Damien, and Audra are a testament to a harsh reality. There are boundaries that should not be crossed, there are relationships that cannot be mended, and there are obsessions that, once ingrained in a person's mind, will destroy everything, including love, friendship, and even the most precious freedom. Audra understands that only by daring to stand up to her fears, to Holden, to her own past, can she regain control of her life. But will she be strong enough to do that, or will she forever be a victim of an endless chase? Where the line between love and control, between care and obsession becomes more fragile and fragile than ever?